He was a handsome and charming teen who had big aspirations in life, wanted a wife and family, and was determined to make that a reality. By any means. She was a popular and beautiful high school cheerleader, who many of her male peers lusted after. Both huge fans of heavy metal music, especially the rock band Van Halen. In due time, they would meet and instantly fall in love and walk down the aisle. However, what seemed like a picture-perfect marriage on the surface was actually an unseen hell just beneath it. After. Gregory Smart was born September 4, 1965 in Nashua, New Hampshire to parents William and Judith Smart. Greg had two siblings, two younger brothers, one named Dean Smart. Greg and Dean were both very close, and Dean would describe Greg as not only his big brother, but his best friend. Greg enjoyed playing Little League Baseball, and even played in a championship game in 1977 with his father William recalling the moment Greg would lead his team to the championship, stating, "All of a sudden he connected with the ball and had a single, and he won the championship. You talk about a father being proud, I was very proud of him." Greg would eventually grow into a huge fan of heavy metal, grew his hair long to his shoulder, and even had played the guitar. He was like many teens during the 80s rock era. By the end of 1986, he would meet his future wife, 19-year-old Pamela Smart, at a New Year's Eve party, and the rest was history. Born August 16, 1967, to parents Linda and John Wojcicki, Pamela Smart was a happy and playful child. She has two siblings, an older sister named Elizabeth and a younger brother named John. Their mother, according to Pamela, was always caring and loving. If they needed anything, they didn't have to call on the phone for her, she was always right there. Their father John, who was a pilot, was also very loving to his children and had a special bond with Pamela. 8th. Her family would move from Miami, Florida to Derry, New Hampshire when she was in the 8th grade. She quickly transitioned to the new city and school and became a cheerleader at Derry's Pinkerton Academy. She was very popular and would continue cheerleading all the way up until she graduated from high school and enrolled at Florida State University, where she got a degree in communications. She was a DJ and hosted 2 different radio shows while there. While visiting New Hampshire over Christmas break in 1986, she would meet Greg Smart at the New Year's Eve party and began dating 2 months later in February 1987. She claimed she initially didn't like him but eventually grew to. Her mother said Pamela told her, "He's the one," she loved him, and I liked him as well. Greg felt the same way and would move from New Hampshire to Florida just to be with Pam. After 2 years of dating, Greg and Pamela would tie the knot on May 7, 1989 in an almost fairy tale wedding with family and friends around, and a series of videos and photos captured. They seemed like the happiest couple. Pamela said she saw a fulfilling future with Greg and wanted children with him. However, only 7 months into this marriage, Gregory would be gunned down in his home over lust, money, and lies. The newlyweds would move back to New Hampshire into a nice condominium. Greg would begin his job as an insurance agent at his father's firm, and Pamela worked as a media coordinator at Winnicott High School. Just as life together heated up, it fizzled out just as quickly. The first sign of that is when Greg returned home with his hair chopped off. He was going into the professional business of insurance with his father and wanted to fit the image. He also was maturing from a teen rocker to an adult who valued family and stability. Pamela didn't like the new look but still proceeded with marrying Greg. Greg would often work late at night, going to different customers' homes to pitch his insurance policies. This left Pamela alone most nights and she began to second-guess her marriage. She was always focused on work, and when she got married she became more social, and with Greg gone most nights, she socialized with the teens she taught at the high school. With Greg seemingly changing his image and personality overnight to Pamela's dislike, and often working late, Pamela would receive another blow when Greg would come home and tell Pam he had been having an affair. She claimed this severely damaged her self-esteem and ruined the trust in their marriage. This infidelity would lead Pamela to confide in someone else, leading to a senseless tragedy. May 1, 1990, Pamela was out late at a board meeting at her school when she left and arrived home around 10 p.m. She approached her front door and realized her front porch light is out, which she felt was odd. She opened her front door and saw Greg laying lifeless on the floor. She began screaming and banging on different neighbors' doors until one answered and called 911, describing what Pamela said she saw, saying Greg was passed out and she didn't know why. When police arrived, Pamela was hysterical and sobbing as they tapped off the crime scene. This case had a lot of red flags, starting with the fact that there was no forced entry whatsoever, no believed robbery that took place, as Greg still had his wallet and gold wedding band on, and although the house was ransacked, aside from a few pieces of jewelry Pamela alleged were stolen, nothing major of value was missing. Greg seemed to have been ambushed, only a single gunshot to the back of his head, execution style. leading police to think what was the motive for this murder? May 4th, Greg Smart would have his funeral and a reporter remembered that day being very cold and everyone. "They're just crying," he said. He just didn't want anything to do with covering the funeral. Pamela was at the funeral, still extremely distraught and had to be held up by her father and sister as she walked. 3 days later on May 7th, she did her first interview describing what she had been going through the last few days without Greg, how she still felt Greg would walk through their door one day, going to the cemetery for the first time, and how she believed Greg was keeping her strong during this time. This case had many leads to no avail until June 10, 1990, 6 weeks after Greg's murder, when a man walked into the police station with a handgun in a paper bag and said he believed his gun was used to kill Greg Smart. He said he had the gun stored in his house and when he went to retrieve it, it appeared to have been cleaned. He knew he didn't clean it and said his son's friend by the name of Ralph Welch told him that the gun may have been used in the murder of Greg Smart. Police did a ballistics test on the gun and the bullet found, and it was a match. This was the murder weapon that killed Greg Smart that night. That same night, police picked up Ralph Welch and questioned him about the murder, and he would tell everything. He explained he was told 3 teens went to Greg's home to kill him. Those 3 teens were Billy Flynn, Patrick Randall, and Vance Lattime Jr. Another teen, Raymond Fowler, was allegedly there as well. After the trio picked up Raymond, they would head to the Smart residence and Billy and Patrick would head inside as Vance and Raymond waited in the car. When Greg came home, they forced him to his knees while Patrick held a knife to Greg's throat and Billy shot him once in the head, killing him. Even more shocking was when Ralph claimed the murder was done all for insurance money promised by Pamela Smart, only $500 apiece. The connection between Pamela Smart and the 3 teens came from them all going to Winnacunnet High School together, where Pamela worked at, and a class Pamela taught and they attended. During one of the classes, 16-year-old Billy Flynn and 22-year-old Pamela Smart connected. Pamela was at a low point in her life and the charming guitarist was boosting up her dwindling confidence, with Pamela directing an orange juice commercial for her class and Billy working on the music for the film and working behind the camera. The two started a bond with each other that led to an affair. The 3 teens were arrested and surprisingly, even under the pressure, they remained silent. Police would need another lead and it would come from an anonymous source. A woman placed an anonymous call to police claiming a female student named Cecilia Pierce knew what had happened to Gregory Smart. Police picked Cecilia up and she stated her and Pamela were very close, like Pamela was her big sister type of relationship. She claimed Pamela told her she was in love with Billy Flynn and had walked in on them having sex. Cecilia also claimed she heard Pamela basically planning Greg's entire death from start to finish. They still needed more proof than allegations, so they sent Cecilia with a wire recording to talk with Pamela in her office at Winnacunnet High School, and in so many ways she alluded to her involvement without ever directly confessing or admitting to anything. Telling Cecilia, "Sometimes I think you're going to come in here with a police wire or something and get me in trouble. If you tell the truth you're probably going to get arrested, you'll be an accessory to murder, and even if they don't arrest you, Billy, me, Junior and Pete will have to be put in the slammer for life." Pamela would later claim her lawyer told her not to talk to Cecilia because she'd be wired, but Pamela apparently wanted to persuade Cecilia to not talk, or she'd be arrested and charged. This audio was enough to arrest Pamela Smart, and this court case would be huge. Before the O.J. Simpson trial, the Menendez brothers trial, there was the Pamela Smart trial, and it took the news world by storm. The 3 teens were under the impression if they remained silent under they were 18, they'd be freed. When they found out that would not be the case, their morals changed, and they would confess to what took place. January 23, 1991, police would interview Vance Lattime with his lawyer present, and Vance would claim Pamela told them if she got divorced, she would receive no money, and if he was killed, she'd receive money from his life insurance. She claimed Greg had hit her, and when Billy and Vance entered her office one day, she had her call on speakerphone as her and Greg had a heated argument before hanging up. She used that call as further leverage for Billy to kill Greg, telling Billy, "The only way me and you can be together is if Greg's dead." In an interview with Billy, he would echo what Vance said, stating she would talk about killing him every day. She hated him. He recalled her yelling at him one time stating, "If you're never going to do this, let me know now, so we can end this, because I can't keep going on like this." Vance claimed he was told from Billy that he would receive $500 for his role from Pamela Smart after she received her $140,000 life insurance payout. He said she told us to stage it to look like a robbery and asked if we had a gun, to which Billy responded yes. With the confession secured, trial was set, and this case exploded and became a national sensation. Throughout this case, Pamela Smart would maintain Although she did have an affair with Billy Flynn, she didn't put together a plan to kill her husband Greg Smart. The three teens were emphatic about her role in planning his demise, and each described their part to a T. Starting with Patrick Randall, he described going to Haverhill to pick up Vance's grandmother's car and driving to Derry to kill Greg Smart. He stated Pamela told them she'd leave the back door unlocked and instructed them not to hurt her dog and to ransack the home, taking whatever they wanted. He said he thought it would be easier to stab Greg. But Pamela said blood might get everywhere and to not get any blood on her sofa. He said Greg opened the front door and walked in calling for his dog. That's when Billy grabbed him and Greg began to scream and try to run out before switching and asking about his dog, to which he responded, "Your dog's okay, it's not going to get hurt." He then held a knife to Greg's throat and demanded his wedding ring, which Greg refused, stating his wife would kill him. Patrick was then supposed to cut his throat but said because of some of the things he said, he couldn't do it. That's when Billy Flynn pulled the gun out and shot Greg in the head, killing him. When it was Billy's turn to take the stand, he would state Pamela drove him home one night and began to cry, which upset him. He said she told him the only way we can be together is if we kill him. When you ransack my house, take whatever you want because I'm insured, and I'll be at a meeting so I'll have an alibi. Pamela had taken some bikini photos with a female friend of hers for a modeling contest and gave them to Billy, telling him if he wanted he could have them, further seducing and manipulating the young teen. Billy was asked how he overpowered Greg, and he tearfully stated he wasn't struggling really, he just wanted to know what was going on. He said he told Greg to shut up and pulled the gun out, cocked it and aimed at his head for what he said seemed like 100 years. He then said he asked God to forgive him before pulling the trigger. When Pamela took the stand, she had a different version of events. She claimed she did indeed have an affair with Billy but broke it off, and once she told him she no longer wanted a relationship with him, he began to cry and say he couldn't live without her. Her defense claimed he killed Greg in a jealous rage. March 22, 1991, the verdict was in, Pamela Smart was guilty, and she was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. While Greg's family was happy with the verdict, Pamela's family was crushed. Over the years she would do numerous interviews claiming her innocence and had earned 2 master's degrees while incarcerated, still never taking accountability for her role in Greg Smart's death. She still remains in prison as of September 2024. The other 4 involved in the murder of Greg Smart have all been released in 25 years or less. Billy Flynn tearfully apologized for his role in the murder, and said he would have never killed him had it not been for Pamela. He was able to ask Pamela one question via videotape, and he asked if she ever loved him. She responded, "Yes, I believe I did love him." She still continues to fight her appeal in hopes of one day being freed.
What would it be?
Whether or not she really ever loved me. In hindsight, that might not seem like a very big deal to most people, but knowing that she had me do this, and that I did go through with it, and that she never really loved me, would probably kill me.
Yes, I did. I think I did really love him.